The galaxy was dying, not from some natural disaster or cosmic event, but from something far worse, something that ate worlds and turned civilizations into nothing more than empty memories. They called themselves the Vacrian Swarm, though most species simply called them death. For 300 years, the Vacrians had spread across the stars like a disease. They were not like other species. They did not negotiate, they did not trade, they did not even communicate in any meaningful way. They simply consumed everything in their path. Ambassador Thelran stood at the observation window of Earth's primary orbital station, looking down at the blue and green planet below. His forearms were clasped behind his back in a gesture that humans had learned meant deep concern. His species, the Thalaxians, had been fighting the Vacrians for over 2 centuries. They had lost 17 colony worlds and countless billions of lives. "It is beautiful," he said quietly, his translator device rendering his clicking speech into perfect English. "Your world. It reminds me of Thalax Prime before the first invasion." The human standing beside him said nothing. Admiral Catherine. Zhao was not known for being talkative. She was known for being effective. At 63 years old, she had silver hair cut military short, and eyes that had seen more combat than most people could imagine. She had fought in the Martian separatist wars, the Titan Rebellion, and a dozen smaller conflicts that never made the history books. "How long do we have?" she asked. Thelran's skin shifted from blue to a darker purple. Among his people, it meant fear. 3 months, perhaps less. The Splinter Fleet is moving faster than our projections anticipated. Numbers? 2,000 bioships, each one roughly equivalent to what you would call a frigate. But do not let the size fool you, Admiral. They will overwhelm any defense through sheer numbers and adaptation. The Vacrians learn from every battle. They evolve. Zhao turned away from the window and walked toward the holographic display in the center of the command room. With a gesture, she activated it. A 3-dimensional map of local space appeared, showing Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, and the outer colonies. Red markers indicated the projected path of the Vacrian fleet. "The Coalition isn't sending help," she said. It was not a question. Thelran's silence was answer enough. After a moment, he spoke. "The Coalition is fighting for survival on 17 different fronts. We have lost 40% of our territory. Every ship, every soldier is desperately needed. Your species is new to the galactic community. 50 years is barely a moment in cosmic terms. The Council believes that resources cannot be spared for primitives." Zhao finished. "That is what they think of us, is it not? We are too young, too backwards. Our ships use chemical propulsion for missiles. We still use kinetic weapons. We build our vessels like ocean warships from our own history." Thelran did not deny it. "There are species in the Coalition who have been spacefaring for thousands of years. They have energy shields that can deflect planet-killing weapons. They have quantum computers that can calculate jump trajectories in microseconds. They have weapons that tear apart matter at the molecular level." He paused. "Humanity has railguns and missiles. And nuclear weapons," Zhao added with a thin smile. "Do not forget those. The Coalition finds them terribly crude. Yes, the Council banned their use in warfare 7,000 years ago." Zhao studied the hologram, her mind already working through possibilities and probabilities. The Vacrian fleet would enter the Sol system through the Helios corridor. It was the only practical approach vector given the gravitational anomalies and dense asteroid fields in the surrounding space. Any other route would add months to their journey, and the Vacrians were not known for their patience. "If we evacuate the outer colonies now," she said slowly, "we can get most of the civilian population back to Earth and Mars. The mining stations, the research outposts, the agricultural domes on Europa. We can save lives." "And then?" Thelran asked. "And then we fight." The ambassador's skin shifted again, this time to a pale green. "Surprise." "Admiral, I must speak plainly. The Terran Defense Force has 237 ships. Most of them are corvettes and destroyers. You have 7 cruisers and 3 capital ships. Against 2,000 Vacrian bioships, you will last perhaps 3 days. A week if you are fortunate. So we should surrender? I am saying you should consider evacuation. The coalition can provide transport for your population. It will take time, but we can relocate humanity to safer worlds. Your species can survive. Zhao turned to face him fully. Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. We are stubborn. Some might say foolishly so. We have a saying on Earth. It goes like this. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. Do you understand what that means? Thelron tilted his head, a gesture he had learned from humans. I believe so. You value pride over survival. No, Zhao said firmly. We value freedom over slavery. We value home over exile. And, most importantly, we value the chance to fight over the certainty of running away. She gestured to the planet below them. That is Earth. 7 billion humans live there. Their parents were born there. Their grandparents were born there. Every ancestor going back hundreds of thousands of years lived and died on that world. You want us to abandon it without firing a single shot? I want your species to survive, Thelren said quietly. Then we will survive by fighting. Alert the Council that humanity appreciates their offer but respectfully declines. We will make our stand here. 3 weeks later, Captain Marcus Shaw stood in the docking bay of the Terran Defense Shipyard 3, staring up at his new command. The TDS Indomitable was the newest and most powerful warship humanity had ever built. She was 1.2 kilometers, from bow to stern, with armor plating 30 meters thick in places. Her hull was dark gray, almost black, with the emblem of the Terran Defense Force painted on her side, a stylized Earth surrounded by stars. Shaw was 46 years old with graying hair and a scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his cheek. He had gotten it during the Battle of Deimos when shrapnel had torn through the bridge of his previous ship. 37 crew members had died that day. He had lived, though sometimes he wondered if he deserved to. She is beautiful, Captain. Shaw turned to see his executive officer approaching. Commander James Okonkwo was 38, tall and lean, with dark skin and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. He had served with Shaw for 5 years and had saved his life twice. Shaw trusted him more than anyone else in the fleet. She is a weapon, Shaw corrected. Weapons are not beautiful, they are necessary. Can she not be both? Shaw smiled slightly. Perhaps. What is the crew status? 400 personnel aboard and accounted for. Engineering reports all systems operational. Weapon systems are loaded and calibrated. The new mass driver has been tested and certified. We are ready to depart on your order. The mass driver. That was humanity's secret weapon, or at least they hoped it would be. It ran the entire length of the ship, a magnetic accelerator that could fire a projectile at 15% the speed of light. The kinetic energy from such an impact would be devastating. In tests, a single shot had vaporized an asteroid the size of a small moon. And morale? Shaw asked. Okonkwo hesitated. Mixed. Some of the crew are eager to prove themselves. They want to show the galaxy that humans can fight, others are afraid they know the odds. What about you, Commander? Are you afraid? Terrified, sir, Okonkwo said honestly. But I would rather be afraid and fighting than safe and hiding. Good answer. Shaw gestured toward the ship. Let us meet our crew. The briefing room was packed. 400 faces looked up at Shaw as he stepped to the front. Some were young, fresh from the academy with barely any real experience. Others were veterans like himself, men and women who had seen combat and knew what it meant. There were engineers, gunners, pilots, medics, and support staff. All of them were volunteers. Everyone on this ship had chosen to be here. Shaw let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. My name is Captain Marcus Shaw. For the next 3 months, I am your commanding officer. More than that, I am your shipmate. We are going to face something that no human has ever fought before. The Vacrian swarm has destroyed hundreds of civilizations. They have killed trillions of beings. They are coming for Earth, and we are going to stop them. Someone in the back let out a nervous laugh. Shaw ignored it. I will not lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. The Vacrian fleet outnumbers us massively. They have been fighting and winning wars since before humanity discovered fire. The entire galactic community believes we cannot win. They believe we should run. He paused. But we are not going to run. We are going to take this ship to the Helios corridor and we are going to hold that line. We are going to fight with everything we have until either the enemy is destroyed, or we are. A hand went up. Shaw nodded. Speak. A young woman in engineering yellow stood up. Sir, Chief Engineer Rosa Delgado. Permission to speak freely? Granted. Why are we doing this? I mean, really? If the entire coalition could not stop the Vacrians, what chance does one ship have? Even if we hold them for a few days, what does that accomplish? Shaw studied her. It was a fair question, an honest question. Chief Engineer, what do you think will happen if we evacuate? If we abandon Earth and scatter humanity across coalition space as refugees? Delgado frowned. We survive. We rebuild someday. No, Shaw said flatly. We disappear. We become footnotes. In galactic history, we become the species that ran away. Our children will grow up on alien worlds, learning alien customs, slowly losing everything that makes us human. He looked around the room. I have a daughter. She is 9 years old. Her name is Sarah. She lives in New Seattle with her mother. If I let the Vacrians pass without fighting, what am I teaching her? That when things get hard, you run? That when evil comes knocking, you hide? The room was completely silent now. We fight because someone has to, Shaw continued. We fight because behind us is everything we love. We fight because maybe, just maybe, we can buy enough time for Earth to evacuate the civilians. We fight because that is what humans do. We have always fought against impossible odds. We have always stood up to monsters and tyrants and disasters. And yes, sometimes we lose. But we never ever stop trying. He gestured to the ceiling, to the stars beyond. The galaxy thinks we are primitive. They think our weapons are outdated, and our tactics are ancient history. They are probably right. But they are going to learn something about humans. We do not need fancy energy shields or molecular disruptors. We have something better. We have courage. We have stubbornness. And we have the absolute refusal to quit. Shaw's voice rose. In 3 months, the Vacrian swarm will arrive at the Helios corridor. They will find the Indomitable waiting for them. They will learn that humans do not surrender. They will learn that Earth is not theirs for the taking. And if we die making that point, then so be it. We will die as humans, standing our ground and fighting to the last breath. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave. 400 crew members rose to their feet, shouting and clapping. Shaw let it continue for a moment before raising his hand for silence. Stations, everyone. We launch in 6 hours. Prepare yourselves. Check your equipment. Say your prayers if you have them. And remember, we are Terran. We hold the line. As the crew filed out, Okonkwo approached. Inspiring speech, Captain. Do you believe it? Shaw was quiet for a moment. I believe we have to try, James. That is enough. That night, Shaw sat alone in his quarters, staring at a photo on his desk. Sarah smiled up at him, gap-toothed and happy, holding a toy spaceship. He had missed her last birthday because of training exercises. He would probably miss many more. He recorded a message, knowing she might never see it. Sarah, this is Dad. If you are watching this, it means I did not come home. I want you to know that I am proud of you. I want you to know that I love you more than anything in this universe. And I want you to know why I had to do this. Someday you will be old enough to understand. Someday you will face your own impossible choice. When that day comes, I hope you remember that your father stood up when it mattered. I hope you remember that running away is not always the answer. Fight for what matters, sweetheart. Fight for home. Fight for family. Fight for everything good in this world. And never ever give up. He ended the recording and sat in the darkness, waiting for launch time. The Indomitable departed 6 hours later, her engines burning bright as she accelerated away from Earth. Behind her, the planet glowed blue and beautiful in the starlight. Ahead of her waited the Helios corridor and an enemy that had never known defeat. In the command chair, Captain Shaw watched the stars and prepared for war. The Helios Corridor was not a corridor at all, not in any traditional sense. It was a region of space roughly 2 million kilometers across, filled with asteroids ranging from pebble-sized to small mountains. Navigation was difficult. Sensors were unreliable because of the gravitational anomalies that twisted and bent even light itself. For most ships, it was a place to avoid. For Captain Marcus Shaw, it was perfect. The Indomitable hung in space at the corridor's entrance, her dark hull almost invisible against the starfield. Around her, thousands of asteroids drifted in their slow eternal dance. Shaw stood on the bridge studying the tactical display with Commander Okonkwo at his side. "If they want to reach Earth," Shaw said, tracing a finger along the display, "they have to come through here. Any other route adds months to their journey. The Vakrians have never been patient. But they also have never been foolish," Okonkwo pointed out. "What if they simply go around, take the long way? Then we have bought Earth 3 more months to evacuate, 3 more months to prepare defenses, 3 more months to live." Shaw zoomed in on a particular cluster of asteroids. "But they will not go around. Their entire strategy has always been overwhelming force and speed. They hit hard and fast, never giving their enemies time to prepare. Patience is not in their nature." Chief Engineer Rosa Delgado's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, this is engineering. I need to speak with you about our power distribution." "Go ahead, Chief." "Sir, I have been running simulations. If we maintain full shields and weapons-ready status, we can last approximately 72 hours before we need to shut down for coolant cycling. If we engage in continuous combat, that number drops to perhaps 30 hours. Your recommendation?" There was a pause. "My recommendation is that we have a backup plan for when things go sideways, because they will go sideways, sir." Shaw almost smiled. He liked Delgado. She was honest, competent, and not afraid to speak her mind. "Noted, Chief. Begin preparations for emergency power routing. I want to be able to divert everything to shields or weapons at a moment's notice." "Aye, sir." Okonkwo pulled up another display. "Captain, I have been thinking about the Vakrian bioships. According to Coalition intelligence, they use acid-based weapons and some form of biological missiles. Their hulls are partially organic and can repair minor damage over time. Your point?" "My point is that they are living things, or at least partially living. That means they have weaknesses that mechanical ships do not. They need oxygen or some equivalent. They have biological processes that can be disrupted. They feel pain, possibly." Shaw turned to face him. "You want to weaponize the environment." "Exactly. The asteroids, the radiation from the anomalies, even the cold of space itself. We make this corridor as hostile as possible, not just for the Vakrians, but for anything biological." "Tell me more." Over the next 2 weeks, the crew of the Indomitable worked around the clock to turn the Helios Corridor into a killing field. Engineering teams in EVA suits planted mines throughout the asteroid field. These were not sophisticated weapons, just chemical explosives packed into metal casings and equipped with simple proximity sensors. But there were hundreds of them, and in the tight confines of the corridor, they would be devastating. Weapons. Officer Lieutenant Sarah Chen had another idea. She was 29 years old, brilliant and completely fearless. Shaw had seen her walk through a firefight during the Titan Rebellion without even flinching. "Captain," she said, presenting her proposal on a datapad, "we have 64 Harpoon drones in storage. They are designed for ship-to-ship combat in close quarters. I want to reprogram them." "For what purpose?" "Kamikaze runs. We strip out their return protocols and double their explosive payloads. When the Vakrians come through, we send these drones straight at them on one-way trips. They move fast, they are small enough to avoid most weapons fire, and they pack enough punch to crack a frigate's hull." Shaw studied the proposal. "The cost? 3,000 credits per drone. But sir, we are already dead if this does not work. What does cost matter?" He approved the modification immediately. The days blurred together. Shaw barely slept, spending most of his time on the bridge or touring the ship, talking to the crew, making sure morale stayed high. It was harder than he had expected. Everyone knew they were facing impossible odds. Everyone knew that coalition, reinforcements were not coming. One evening, Shaw found himself in the mess hall at 0300 hours. He was exhausted, running on coffee and sheer willpower. To his surprise, he found Delgado there as well, sitting alone at a table with a cup of something that smelled like tea. "Cannot sleep, Chief?" Shaw asked, sitting across from her. She shook her head. "Too much to think about. I keep running through scenarios in my head. What happens if the primary power couplings fail? What if we lose attitude control? What if the reactor starts to overload?" She laughed bitterly. "I have been an engineer for 15 years. I have kept ships running through meteor storms and solar flares and combat damage. But this is different. Because you know the odds. Because I know we are going to die," she said bluntly. "I am not stupid, Captain. I can do the math. 2,000 enemy ships against one. It does not matter how good we are or how clever our tactics. Eventually they will overwhelm us." Shaw was quiet for a moment. "Chief, let me ask you something. Why did you volunteer for this mission?" "Because someone had to." "That is not an answer." Delgado stared into her tea. "I have 2 brothers on Earth, Marco and Luis. Marco is a doctor in Mexico City. Luis is a teacher in Buenos Aires. They both have families, children. I volunteered because if we do not stop the Vakrians here, they will reach Earth, and my brothers and their families will die." She looked up at Shaw. "So yes, we are probably going to die, but maybe, just maybe, we can buy enough time for them to evacuate. Maybe we can save some lives. That is worth dying for." "Yes," Shaw said quietly. "Yes, it is." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. 2 people facing oblivion and finding a strange peace and acceptance. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka was in charge of communications and signals intelligence. She was 32, Japanese, and had the most advanced degree in quantum communications theory that Starfleet Academy had ever produced. She was also monitoring every coalition channel she could access. "Captain," she reported one morning, "I have been tracking fleet movements across the sector. The coalition is pulling back on multiple fronts. They are consolidating their forces around core systems." "They are abandoning the frontier," Shaw said. "Yes, sir. And there is something else. I have been intercepting transmissions from coalition observers. They are watching us." Shaw raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Multiple species have stealth satellites positioned around the Helios corridor. They are recording everything we do. Our preparations, our tactics, our ship movements. The entire galaxy is going to watch this battle, sir." "Good," Shaw said. "Let them watch. Let them see what humans can do." With 1 week remaining before the projected Vakrian arrival, Shaw called a full crew assembly. 400 people gathered in the main hangar bay, the only space large enough to hold everyone. Shaw stood on a cargo container so everyone could see him. "I want to talk to you about fear," he began. "I am afraid. Every single one of you should be afraid too. Fear is natural when facing death. Fear keeps us alert. It sharpens our minds and quickens our reflexes. Fear is not our enemy." He looked around the bay, meeting eyes with as many crew members as he could. "But panic is our enemy. Despair is our enemy. The moment we believe we cannot win, we have already lost. So I am going to tell you what victory looks like for us. Victory is not destroying all 2,000 Vakrian ships. That would be nice, but it is not realistic. Victory is holding this corridor for as long as possible. Victory is making the Vakrians pay for every meter they advance. Victory is showing the galaxy that Earth does not surrender." A young ensign raised his hand. His name was David Park, and he looked barely old enough to shave. "Sir, what happens if we cannot hold them?" Shaw appreciated the honesty of the question. "If we cannot hold them, ensign, then we die, but we die fighting. We die protecting our home, and we die knowing that we gave everything we had. There are worse ways to go." "Will it matter?" another voice called out. "If we die here, will anyone remember?" "Yes," Shaw said firmly. Because the galaxy is watching, because Earth will know that we stood our ground, because every other human in the fleet will see what we did and find their own courage. He paused. We are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for an idea. The idea that some things are worth dying for. The idea that home matters. The idea that humans do not quit. Okonkwo stepped forward. 3 cheers for the captain. 3 cheers for the indomitable. The roar that followed shook the hangar bay, 400 voices shouting as one, defiant and fierce. Shaw let it wash over him, feeling the weight of command and the responsibility for all these lives. That night he recorded his second message to Sarah. Hey, sweetheart, Dad again. We are almost ready here. The ship is in good shape and the crew is the best I have ever served with. I want to tell you something important. Your grandfather, my father, he fought in the water wars before you were born. He used to tell me that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway. I did not understand that when I was young, but I understand it now. He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. Someday someone might tell you that what we did here was suicide, that we threw our lives away for nothing. Do not believe them. We are choosing to stand between the monsters and everything we love. That is not suicide. That is sacrifice. There is a difference. 2 days before the Vakrian fleet was due to arrive, long-range sensors picked up the first traces of their approach. Okonkwo was on duty when the readings came through. He immediately called Shaw to the bridge. Sir, we have FTL signatures, multiple contacts, distance approximately 100 million kilometers and closing. Shaw studied the sensor display. The readings were strange, not like typical ship signatures. They pulsed and flickered, almost like living heartbeats. How many? He asked. Difficult to get an exact count because of sensor interference, but preliminary scans suggest at least 2,000 contacts, possibly more. Sound general quarters. All hands to battle stations. Seal all bulkheads. Bring weapons online and charge the main battery. Throughout the ship, alarms blared. Crew members ran to their positions with practiced efficiency. Gun crews loaded railgun batteries. Missile tubes were armed and ready. The mass driver's magnetic coils began to hum with power. In engineering, Delgado watched her power distribution boards carefully. All systems green, she reported. Reactor at 90% and climbing. We are ready, Captain. Shaw settled into his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew worked, at their stations with quiet intensity. He could feel the tension in the air, the mixture of fear and determination. Lieutenant Tanaka, he said, open a channel. Broadcast on all frequencies. Channel open, sir. Shaw took a moment to gather his thoughts. Somewhere out there, coalition observers were watching. Somewhere behind them, Earth was listening. And ahead of them, the Vakrians were coming. This is Captain Marcus Shaw of the Terran defense ship Indomitable. We are stationed at the Helios corridor. To any coalition forces monitoring this channel, thank you for coming to help defend Earth. He paused, knowing there were no coalition forces coming, but wanting to maintain hope for his crew. To the Vakrian swarm, I have a simpler message. You want to reach Earth? You will have to go through us first. And I promise you this, we will make you pay for every centimeter of space. We are Terran. We hold the line. He nodded to Tanaka, who closed the channel. Now what? Okonkwo asked quietly. Now we wait, Shaw said, and we prepare to show the galaxy what humanity can do. The Indomitable hung in space, surrounded by her field of mines and modified drones, her weapons charged and ready. Behind, her millions of kilometers away, Earth rotated peacefully, unaware of the storm that was coming. On the bridge, Shaw watched the sensor displays and thought about his daughter. He thought about all the people on Earth who were going about their daily lives, who had no idea that their survival might depend on one ship and 400 people. Captain, Chen reported, all weapon systems ready, all mines armed, drones are on standby waiting for your signal. Excellent, Lieutenant. The hours crawled by. The Vakrian fleet drew closer. Shaw ordered the crew to rotate through shifts, making sure everyone got at least a few hours of rest. He knew that once the battle started, there would be no time for sleep. With 12 hours until projected contact, Shaw walked through the ship one final time. He visited engineering, where Delgado and her team were making last-minute adjustments. He stopped by medical, where Dr. Hassan and his staff were preparing for casualties. He went to the gun decks, where crews stood ready by their weapons. Everywhere he went, he saw the same thing. Fear, yes, but also determination, pride, a refusal to give up. These were his people, his crew, his responsibility. "Sir," a young gunner said as Shaw passed, "we are going to make them pay for Earth, for all of us." "Yes," Shaw agreed. "Yes, we are." He returned to the bridge as the countdown continued. 6 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour. "Contact, Tanaka." Reported. Multiple vessels emerging from FTL. Range 500,000 kilometers. On the display, the Vakrian fleet appeared. The sensors could barely make sense of what they were seeing. The ships were not mechanical. They were organic, writhing things that pulsed with bioluminescent lights. They moved through space like a school of predatory fish, coordinated and deadly. 2017 ships, Okonkwo reported. Size classification ranges from frigate to light cruiser. They are forming up into attack formations. Shaw gripped the arms of his command chair. This was it. The moment that would define everything. "All stations report readiness," he ordered. One by one, department heads reported in. Weapons ready. Shields at maximum. Engines at full power. Medical standing by. All 400 crew, members at their stations waiting for the order. The Vakrian fleet began to advance, picking up speed as they approached the corridor. Shaw could see them now on visual sensors, alien and terrifying. They looked like enormous wasps or hornets, their hulls segmented and covered in what appeared to be armored plating that shifted and moved. "They have detected us," Tanaka reported. "I am picking up communications between their ships. It is unlike anything I have heard before. Almost like music, but wrong, discordant." "Can you translate?" "No, sir. It is completely alien. But based on their formation changes, I believe they consider us a minor threat. They are sending a vanguard to clear us out." Shaw watched as approximately 200 Vakrian ships broke off from the main fleet, accelerating toward the Indomitable. 200, he said quietly. "They think 200 ships will be enough. Should we retreat deeper into the corridor?" Okonkwo asked. "No. We let them come to us. We let them think they have the advantage." Shaw looked around the bridge. "This is it, people. Remember your training. Remember why we are here. And remember, we are human. We do not quit." The Vakrian vanguard closed to 300,000 kilometers, 200,000, 100,000. Shaw's voice was calm and clear when he gave the order. "All weapons, fire." The Indomitable spoke with thunder. 18 railgun batteries opened fire simultaneously, sending massive slugs of depleted uranium downrange at tremendous velocity. The projectiles crossed the distance in seconds, slamming into the lead Vakrian, bioships with devastating force. Armor plating, both biological and mechanical, shattered under the impact. 3 ships simply disintegrated, torn apart by the sheer kinetic energy. 5 more tumbled away, trailing atmosphere and biological fluids. "Hits confirmed," Chen reported, her voice tight with excitement. 8 enemy ships destroyed or disabled. "Missiles away," the tactical officer added. "Time to impact, 40 seconds. Shaw watched the display as over 100 missiles streaked toward the Vakrian vanguard. These were not sophisticated guided weapons. They were simple, brutal implements of destruction, conventional explosives with basic targeting systems. But humanity had been building better and better missiles for centuries, and these were the best Earth had to offer. The Vakrians responded. Their ships began emitting clouds of something that looked like biological matter, spores or seeds perhaps. The clouds intercepted some of the missiles, detonating them early, but not all of them, not enough of them. 63 missiles reached their targets and exploded. The vacuum of space erupted in silent fury as warheads detonated against organic hulls. More Vakrian ships died, their bioluminescent lights flickering out like dying stars. 24 confirmed kills, Okonkwo reported. Enemy formation disrupted. But the Vakrians were already adapting. The remaining ships in the vanguard began to spread out, making themselves harder targets. They accelerated, closing the distance faster than Shaw had anticipated. "They are moving at .07C, Tanaka said, disbelief in her voice. "Captain, those ships are biological. How can they withstand that kind of acceleration?" "Doesn't matter how," Shaw said. "What matters is stopping them. Chen, prepare the mass driver. Target the densest cluster of ships." "Aye, sir. Mass driver charging 70%, 80%, 90%. The ship hummed with barely contained energy as the massive weapon drew power from the reactor. The mass driver was essentially a magnetic rail that ran the entire length of the Indomitable, capable of accelerating a projectile to 15% of light speed. The kinetic energy involved was astronomical. "Full charge," Chen reported. "Ready to fire on your order." Shaw watched the tactical display. The Vakrians had closed to 50,000 kilometers. They were beginning to return fire now, launching projectiles of their own. These were not missiles or railgun slugs, but something else entirely. Spheres of pulsing green light that moved erratically through space. "Brace for impact," Okonkwo ordered. The first wave of Vakrian biomissiles hit the Indomitable's shields. The ship shuddered as energy fields absorbed the blows. But these were not simple kinetic impacts. The biomissiles seemed to eat away at the shields, weakening them in a way that normal weapons did not. Shields down to 87%. The defensive systems officer reported. "That material is some kind of acid compound. It is degrading our shield matrix." "Noted," Shaw said. "Chen, fire the mass driver!" "Firing!" The Indomitable lurched as the mass driver released its payload. A solid slug of dense metal weighing several tons accelerated down the magnetic rail and launched into space at nearly 50,000 kilometers per second. The projectile crossed the distance to the Vakrian formation in less than 2 seconds. The impact was catastrophic. The slug punched through the first Vakrian ship like it was not even there, continuing through 3 more before finally striking a large asteroid behind them. The asteroid exploded in a cascade of debris, and the debris became shrapnel that tore through a dozen more enemy vessels. 17 additional kills, Chen shouted. "The mass driver works." "Begin recharge cycle," Shaw ordered. "All batteries, continue firing. Keep them off balance." The battle became a brutal exchange of fire. The Indomitable's railguns hammered away at the Vakrian vanguard, while missiles filled the space between the two forces. The alien ships returned fire with their biomissiles and what appeared to be beams of concentrated radiation that scorched the Indomitable's hull armor. "Shields at 60%, came the report. "Hull breaches on deck 7 and 12. Damage control teams responding." Shaw ignored the damage reports for now, trusting his crew to handle it. "Okonkwo, begin pulling us back into the asteroid field. Make them chase us." "Aye, sir." The Indomitable's engines flared to life, pushing the massive Dreadnought backward into the dense cluster of asteroids. It was risky maneuvering. One wrong calculation, and they would collide with a rock, the size of a mountain. But Shaw was counting on the Vakrians being overconfident. They were. The enemy vanguard pursued, their ships weaving through the asteroid field with disturbing grace. They were hunting now, coordinating their movements in ways that suggested a hive mind or shared consciousness now, Shaw said quietly. "Chen, detonate Mine Cluster Alpha." Chen's fingers flew across her control panel. "Cluster Alpha detonating in 3, 2, 1. Throughout the asteroid field, hidden mines exploded. The blasts themselves were not particularly powerful, but they did not need to be. What mattered was the debris. Thousands of chunks of metal and rock became high-velocity shrapnel, tearing through the Vakrian formation. 20 more enemy ships died, shredded by the improvised weapon. "They are adapting," Tanaka warned. "I am seeing changes in their formation. They are spreading out more, using the asteroids for cover just like we are." Shaw nodded. He had expected this. The Vakrians were known for their ability to learn and adapt, but humanity had something they did not: creativity born from centuries of warfare against their own kind. Lieutenant Chen, release drone swarm. 1. Drones away. 64 Harpoon drones launched from the Indomitable's hangar bays. These were small craft, each about the size of a fighter but packed with explosives and programmed for suicide runs. They scattered through the asteroid field, their simple AI systems guiding them toward Vakrian targets. The enemy tried to shoot them down, but the drones were small and fast, and there were too many of them. One by one, they found their targets and detonated. Each explosion took out a Vakrian ship or crippled it beyond recovery. Enemy vanguard down to 87 functional ships, Okonkwo reported. Captain, we have destroyed or disabled more than half of them. But there was no time to celebrate. The main Vakrian fleet had reached the corridor entrance and was now beginning to enter in force. Shaw watched as hundreds of enemy ships poured into the asteroid field. New contacts, Tanaka said, her voice strained. 500 ships entering the corridor. No, wait. 700. They are committing their full strength. Shaw felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. This was the real battle. The vanguard had just been a probe, a way for the Vakrians to test the Indomitable's capabilities. All hands prepare for sustained combat, he ordered. Engineering, I need maximum power to shields and weapons. Divert everything that is not essential. Delgado's voice came back immediately. Aye, sir. Cutting life support to non-essential. Areas reducing gravity to 0.5 standard. Shutting down all recreational systems. You will have your power. The first wave of the main fleet reached weapons range. The space around the Indomitable erupted with fire as both sides unleashed everything they had. Railgun slugs crossed paths with biomissiles. Radiation beams cut through asteroids, vaporizing rock and ice. The Indomitable's point defense systems came online, trying to shoot down incoming projectiles. Shields at 40%, came the report. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Fires in sections 9 through 14. Damage control, contain those fires, Shaw ordered. Chen, do we have mass driver? 15 more seconds, sir. 15 seconds felt like a lifetime. The Indomitable shook as more hits landed. An alarm blared as something critical failed. Portside railgun battery 3 is offline, Chen reported. Catastrophic failure in the loading mechanism. Forget it. Focus on what works. Mass driver status? Charged and ready. Fire! The second mass driver shot punched through the Vakrian formation like a thunderbolt from an angry god. The slug tore through ship after ship, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. When it finally struck an asteroid, the resulting explosion sent a wave of debris washing over the enemy fleet. But there were so many of them. For every ship the Indomitable destroyed, 5 more took its place. The Vakrians were learning, adapting their tactics. They began focusing fire on specific points of the Dreadnought's hull, trying to create concentrated damage rather than spreading their attacks. Shields at 25%, the defensive officer reported. They are targeting our port quarter. Armor plating is beginning to fail. Shaw made a split-second decision. Helmsman, roll ship 90 degrees. Present fresh armor to the enemy. The Indomitable rotated on its axis, bringing undamaged sections of hull to face the Vakrian onslaught. It bought them time, but Shaw knew it was not enough. They were outnumbered by a staggering margin. Casualties? He asked quietly. Okonkwo checked his reports. 47 dead. 89 wounded. Medical is overwhelmed. 47 crew members. 47 people under his command who would never see Earth again. Shaw forced himself to compartmentalize the grief, to focus on the mission. Deploy Mine Cluster Beta, he ordered. More explosions rippled through the asteroid field. More Vakrian ships died, but still they came. Hours passed. The battle became a grinding war of attrition. The Indomitable gave ground slowly, pulling back through the corridor and leaving mines and drones in her wake. The crew fought with desperate intensity, repairing damage as fast as it occurred, loading weapons manually when automatic systems failed. In engineering, Delgado worked miracles. When a coolant line ruptured, she sealed it with her bare hands while ignoring the chemical burns. When the reactor threatened to overload, she climbed into the maintenance shaft and manually adjusted the control rods. She kept the ship running through sheer willpower and engineering expertise. On the gun decks, crews loaded railguns even as fire raged around them. They fired until their weapons glowed red hot, then kept firing anyway. When ammunition for one battery ran out, they hauled shells from another battery across damaged corridors. In medical, Dr. Hassan performed surgery while the ship shook from impacts. He saved lives while explosions rocked the vessel. He worked until his hands trembled from exhaustion, then kept working. Shaw remained on the bridge, coordinating the defense, making split-second decisions that meant life or death for his crew. He felt the weight of command like never before. "Captain," Tanaka said suddenly, "I am picking up transmissions from outside the corridor. Someone is broadcasting about our battle." "Put it through." A voice filled the bridge, speaking in the formal tones of a coalition news broadcaster. "Unprecedented resistance from a single Terran vessel. The Dreadnought has held the Helios corridor for 7 hours against impossible odds. Casualties are estimated in the hundreds on the human side, but Vakrian losses are staggering. Early reports suggest over 600 enemy ships destroyed." Shaw blinked in surprise. 600? He had been so focused on survival that he had not been counting. "Lieutenant, confirm that number." Okonkwo pulled up the battle computer's analysis. "Sir, the computer estimates between 580 and 620 confirmed Vakrian kills. The number could be higher. Some ships were damaged and drifted into asteroids. 600 ships, 1/3 of the enemy fleet." Shaw felt a fierce pride well up in his chest. "Let the galaxy hear this," he said. "Tanaka, open a channel. Broadcast on all frequencies." "Channel open, sir." Shaw stood from his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew looked up from their stations, exhausted but unbroken. "This is Captain Marcus Shaw of the Terran defense ship Indomitable. To all coalition forces, to all species listening across the galaxy, I want you to hear this. We are one ship. 400 crew. We have been fighting the Vakrian swarm for 7 hours. They outnumber us 20 to 1. They have weapons we have never seen before. They adapt to our every tactic." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And we are still here. We have destroyed 600 of their ships. We have made them pay for every meter of space. We have shown them that humanity does not surrender, does not quit, does not run." His voice rose with conviction. "The Vakrians thought they could terrorize the galaxy. They thought no one could stand against them. They were wrong. We are Terran. We hold the line." The bridge crew erupted in cheers. Across the ship, exhausted crew members listening to the broadcast found new strength. But Shaw knew the celebration was premature. He looked at the tactical display. The Vakrian fleet was regrouping, massing for another assault. They had learned from their losses and were adapting their strategy. "Commander," he said quietly to Okonkwo, "give me a realistic assessment. How long can we hold?" Okonkwo studied his console. "At our current rate of ammunition expenditure and damage accumulation? 18 hours. Maybe 24 if we are lucky. The ship is holding together, but we are taking too much damage. Eventually something critical will fail and we will not be able to repair it in time." Shaw nodded. He had expected as much. "Then we make those hours count. We make them remember this battle for the rest of galactic history." "Aye, sir." The Vakrian fleet began to advance again, and the Indomitable prepared to meet them. The crew was exhausted. The ship was damaged and the odds were still impossible. But they were still fighting, still holding the line, and somewhere across the galaxy, other species were watching and wondering if maybe, just maybe, they had underestimated humanity. Day 2 became Day 3. Day 3 became Day 4. The battle for the Helios corridor continued without pause. The Indomitable was no longer the pristine warship that had departed from Earth weeks earlier. Her hull was scarred and pitted from countless impacts. Entire sections were depressurized. Fires burned in compartments that the crew had been forced to abandon. The once mighty Dreadnought was becoming a floating wreck held together by determination and emergency repairs. But she was still fighting. Captain Shaw had not slept in 48 hours. He refused to leave the bridge while his crew was in combat. His uniform was stained with soot and dried blood from helping pull wounded crew members from a damaged section. His eyes were red-rimmed from exhaustion, but his voice remained steady when he gave orders. "Status report," he said for what felt like the 1,000th time. Commander Okonkwo consulted his displays. His own face showed the strain of the prolonged battle. "Enemy fleet strength down to approximately 900 ships. We have destroyed 1,100 since the engagement began." Our own casualties stand at 198 dead, 147 wounded. We are down to 37% crew effectiveness. Less than half his crew remained combat capable. Shaw felt the weight of each loss like a physical blow. These were not numbers on a screen. They were people. Chen had died 2 hours ago when a biomissile breached the secondary weapons control station. Young Ensign Park had been killed when an explosion tore through his duty station. Dr. Hassan had worked himself to collapse and was now unconscious in his own medical bay. Weapons? Shaw asked. 6 railgun batteries still operational. Missile reserves at 18%. The mass driver is functional. But we have only 3 shots remaining before we completely drain the power reserves. Point defense systems are at 40% effectiveness. Half our targeting sensors are offline. Shields? Fluctuating between 8 and 12%. Any significant hit will likely penetrate to the hull. Engineering? There was a longer pause before Delgado's voice came through, raspy and exhausted. Main reactor is holding at 70% efficiency. We have lost 2 of the 4 backup power plants. Coolant system is barely functional. Hull integrity is at 43%. Captain, we are held together by spit and prayer at this point. Shaw almost smiled. Almost. Your prayers have been effective so far. Chief, keep them coming. Aye, sir. The Vakrians had changed their tactics. After losing so many ships to the Indomitable's conventional weapons, they had switched to a siege strategy. They no longer sent massed waves against the Dreadnought. Instead, they surrounded her, maintaining constant pressure from all directions. They rotated their ships, allowing damaged vessels to fall back while fresh ones took their place. It was effective. Brutally so. The Indomitable could not rest, could not repair, could not do anything but fight continuously. The crew was reaching their breaking point. Incoming, the tactical officer called out. 20 ships approaching from bearing 270. Return fire, Shaw ordered automatically. The remaining railguns swiveled and fired. Several Vakrian ships exploded, but others launched their biomissiles. The green spheres of organic destruction struck the Indomitable's weakened shields. 2 penetrated, slamming into the hull. Hull breach on deck 18, someone shouted. Sections Delta through Gamma are venting atmosphere. Seal emergency bulkheads, Okonkwo ordered. Damage control to deck 18. But there was no damage control team available. They were all busy fighting fires or repairing other damaged sections or lying dead in the corridors. I'm going, Shaw said, standing from his command chair. Captain? You cannot, Okonkwo began. That is an order, Commander. You have the bridge. Shaw ran through the damaged ship, his training taking over. He grabbed 2 crew members from life support, a young woman named Martinez and an older man named Singh, and together they rushed to deck 18. The scene was chaos. Atmosphere was venting through a 2-meter hole in the hull. 2 crew members were trapped on the far side, clinging to equipment to avoid being sucked into space. Shaw and his impromptu team worked frantically, welding emergency plating over the breach while Martinez programmed a repair drone to seal the gap from outside. It took 15 minutes that felt like hours. By the time they finished, Shaw's hands were shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion, but the breach was sealed and the 2 trapped crew members were safe. Captain, Singh said quietly. Thank you. Shaw just nodded and headed back to the bridge. There was no time for thanks. No time for anything but the next crisis. When he arrived, Okonkwo looked relieved. Sir, we have a problem. The Vakrians are massing for another major assault. I count 300 ships forming up at the corridor entrance. Shaw studied the tactical display. The enemy was preparing for a final push, trying to overwhelm the Indomitable through sheer numbers. It would probably work. How long until they attack? He asked. 30 minutes, perhaps less. 30 minutes to prepare. 30 minutes to find a way to survive against 300 ships when they could barely handle 20 at a time. Shaw's mind raced through possibilities. They were out of mines, down to their last few drones. Missile reserves were critically low. The mass driver had 3 shots but took enormous power and time to charge. Lieutenant Tanaka, he said, I need you to scan the surrounding space. Look for anything we can use. Large asteroids, gas pockets, radiation sources, anything. Tanaka worked at her console. Sir, there is a large asteroid approximately 40 kilometers from our position. Diameter of 3 kilometers. Composition suggests high iron content with significant ice deposits. An idea began to form in Shaw's mind. It was risky, possibly insane, But they were out of safe options. Commander, plot a course to that asteroid. Helm, take us there. Maximum thrust. Sir? Okonkwo questioned. We will be even more exposed during the transit. Trust me, Commander. The Indomitable's damaged engines flared, pushing the massive ship toward the asteroid. The Vakrians noticed immediately and increased their attack intensity, trying to stop the Dreadnought from reaching whatever objective Shaw had in mind. Biomissiles hammered the shields. Radiation beams scored the hull. The ship shuddered and groaned as metal stressed beyond its designed limits. Shields failing, the defensive officer shouted. We're taking direct hull hits. Keep going, Shaw ordered. Get us to that asteroid. They reached it with shields completely collapsed and hull breaches on 6 decks. The ship's klaxons were a constant wail of warnings and alerts. All stop, Shaw ordered. Position us on the far side of the asteroid using it as cover. The helmsman complied, maneuvering the Indomitable so the massive rock was between them and the bulk of the Vakrian fleet. Now what, sir? Okonkwo asked. Now we use their numbers against them. Tanaka, calculate the trajectory needed to send this asteroid into the enemy formation. Factor in their current position and projected course. Understanding dawned on Okonkwo's face. You want to use the mass driver on the asteroid. Exactly. It is a 3-kilometer projectile with more mass than anything we could manufacture. If we can get it moving fast enough, it will be unstoppable. It will take all 3 remaining shots, Okonkwo warned. After that, we will have no ammunition for the mass driver at all. Then we had better make them count. Chief Delgado, divert all available power to the mass driver. I do not care if life support fails. I do not care if the lights go out. Everything goes to the weapon. Aye, sir, Delgado responded. But Captain, this will drain the reactor. After the 3rd shot, we will be running on backup power only. That means no shields, reduced weapons, and minimal thrust. I understand. Do it anyway. Throughout the ship, systems began shutting down as power was redirected. The lights dimmed to emergency levels. The temperature immediately began to drop as heating systems went offline. Gravity reduced to near zero as the gravity generators were powered down. Mass driver charging, the weapons officer reported. 30%, 50%, 70%. The Vakrian fleet had completed its formation and was beginning to advance. 300 ships moving in coordinated patterns designed to overwhelm the Indomitable from multiple angles. 90%. Full charge. Fire, Shaw ordered. The first shot struck the asteroid near its center of mass, imparting tremendous velocity. The asteroid began to move slowly at first, but accelerating. Recharging, the weapons officer said. 20 seconds. The Vakrians had noticed the asteroid's movement and were trying to adjust their course. But they were in formation, packed together for maximum firepower. Changing course was difficult. Full charge. Fire. The second shot struck the same impact point, increasing the asteroid's velocity even more. It was moving at several kilometers per second now, a massive projectile that would crush anything in its path. Final shot charging. 15 seconds. The Vakrian fleet was trying to scatter now, their ships breaking formation in an attempt to avoid the incoming asteroid. But they were too close together and the asteroid was too large. Full charge. Fire! The third and final shot was perfect. It struck the asteroid at precisely the right angle and with precisely the right force. The massive rock accelerated to a significant fraction of orbital velocity, hurtling toward the densest concentration of Vakrian ships. Impact in 20 seconds, Tanaka reported. Shaw watched the tactical display. The asteroid looked small on the screen, but he knew its true scale. 3 kilometers of iron and ice moving at tremendous speed. It would hit with the force of multiple nuclear weapons. 10 seconds. The Vakrian ships were firing at the asteroid now, trying desperately to destroy or deflect it. Their weapons scored the surface, blasting away chunks of rock. But they could not stop it. 5 seconds, impact. The asteroid plowed into the Vakrian formation like a god's hammer. The lead ships simply ceased to exist, crushed to nothing by the sheer mass. The asteroid continued through the formation, its surface ablating from impacts but its core intact. Debris from destroyed ships became shrapnel that tore through other vessels. When it finally passed through the enemy fleet, the asteroid had killed or disabled over 200 Vakrian ships. The bridge crew stared at the display in shocked silence. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire bridge was cheering, exhausted crew members finding the energy to celebrate what might be their final victory. Tactical assessment. Shaw said when the cheering died down. Okonkwo studied his console. Vakrian fleet strength down to approximately 600 ships. They are pulling back, reorganizing. I think we hurt them badly, sir. Our status? Power reserves at 16% and falling. Main reactor is offline for emergency cooling. We are running on backup systems only. Shields are completely non-functional. We have 4 operational railgun batteries and enough missiles for perhaps 2 more volleys. No mass driver capability. Hull integrity at 31%. Life support is failing in multiple sections. Shaw did the math in his head. 600 enemy ships. The Indomitable was crippled and out of ammunition. There was no way they could fight off another sustained assault. How long until the reactor can restart? He asked Delgado. 6 hours minimum, the chief engineer responded. And that is if nothing else breaks. Sir, we need to consider our options. Shaw knew what she meant. Surrender or scuttle. Those were the only options left. He thought about his daughter, about Earth, about the promise he had made to hold this line. No, he said quietly. Sir? Okonkwo questioned. No, we are not done. We have held this corridor for 6 days. 6 days of continuous combat. We have destroyed 1,400 Vakrian ships. We have shown the galaxy that humans fight. He stood from his command chair. But we are not dead yet. While we have power and weapons, we keep fighting. Chief, I need every bit of power you can give me. Commander, prepare all remaining weapons. If they come at us again, we make them pay. Sir, Tanaka interrupted. I am picking up new contacts. FTL signatures. Multiple vessels emerging from jump space. Shaw's heart sank. More Vakrians. The war was lost, but Tanaka was smiling. Sir, I am reading Coalition transponder codes. Thalaxian cruisers, Mantaran battleships, Kryloth destroyers. Sir, it is a fleet. A coalition fleet, how many? Shaw asked, hardly daring to hope. Counting now, 50? No, 70. No. Tanaka's voice rose with excitement. Sir, I count over 300 coalition ships. They are forming up at the corridor entrance. On the display, Shaw watched as the coalition fleet appeared. Sleek alien warships with energy shields and advanced weapons. Ships that represented dozens of species, all coming together. A communication request came through. Shaw nodded to Tanaka, who opened the channel. Ambassador Thelran's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, Shaw could see the bridge of a Thalaxian warship. Captain Shaw, Thelran said, his skin glowing bright blue with emotion. We watched your battle. All of us watched. The Council, the Coalition member species, even neutral systems. We watched one human ship hold against impossible odds for 6 days. We watched you destroy 1,400 enemy vessels. We watched you refuse to surrender. The ambassador paused. The Coalition has fought the Vakrians for 300 years. We have lost tens of thousands of ships, trillions of lives. We began to believe they could not be beaten. That surrender was inevitable. His voice grew stronger. You have shown us we were wrong. If one human ship can hold a line for 6 days, what can 300 Coalition ships do? Shaw felt emotion rising in his throat. Ambassador, we cannot fight anymore. We are out of power, out of ammunition. You have done enough, Captain. More than enough. Fall back. We will finish this battle. We will hold the line now. The Coalition fleet surged forward, entering the corridor with weapons blazing. The remaining Vakrian ships found themselves suddenly outnumbered and facing fresh opponents. The tide of battle shifted in an instant. Shaw sagged back into his command chair, exhaustion finally overwhelming him. Commander, take us to safe distance. Minimal power. Let the Coalition handle this. Around him, the bridge crew collapsed at their stations. They had nothing left to give. They had held the line until help arrived. They had done the impossible. Captain, Okonkwo said softly, we did it. We actually did it. No, Shaw corrected, watching the Coalition fleet tear into the Vakrians. We held, they came. Together we are winning. And for the first time in 6 days, Captain Marcus Shaw allowed himself to close his eyes and rest. The Battle of Helios Corridor ended 3 hours after the Coalition fleet arrived. The remaining Vakrian ships fought viciously but were overwhelmed by the combined firepower of 300 warships from a dozen different species. Those that could retreated into FTL, carrying news of their defeat back to the swarm. The rest were destroyed. By the time the guns finally fell silent, the Indomitable was drifting on minimal power, her crew too exhausted to do more than monitor basic systems. Coalition vessels surrounded her protectively, acknowledging that this battered human warship had earned the right to rest. Captain Marcus Shaw woke up in the medical bay. He did not remember getting there. The last clear memory he had was sitting in his command chair, watching the Coalition fleet tear into the Vakrians. Everything after that was fuzzy. "Welcome back to the living, Captain." Shaw turned his head, slowly because everything hurt, and saw Commander Okonkwo sitting beside his bed. The XO looked almost as terrible as Shaw felt. His uniform was torn and stained, his face was bruised, and one arm was in a sling. "How long?" Shaw asked, his voice hoarse. 18 hours. You collapsed on the bridge from exhaustion. Medical said your body simply shut down." Okonkwo smiled slightly. "You are not the only one. 40% of the surviving crew is in medical or sleeping in whatever quiet corner they could find." "Casualties?" Okonkwo's smile faded. "Final count is 203 dead, 119 wounded, 58% casualties. But Captain, we had 400 crew. That means 197 survived relatively intact. Given what we faced, those are acceptable losses." Shaw closed his eyes. Acceptable losses. 203 people who would never see Earth again. Fathers, mothers, sons, daughters. People who had trusted him to lead them. "Sir," Okonkwo said gently, "they knew what they signed up for. Every single person on this ship volunteered. They knew the odds, and they still chose to fight. What about the ship? The Indomitable is in rough shape. Coalition engineers have boarded and are helping with repairs, but it will take months of work before she is spaceworthy again. The hull is structurally compromised in multiple sections. We lost both main engines and 3 of 4 reactors. Most of our weapons are destroyed or non-functional. Honestly, sir, it is a miracle she held together at all. Chief Delgado? Alive, injured but alive. She has second-degree burns on both hands and arms from that coolant leak. Medical says she will recover fully in about 6 weeks. She keeps trying to sneak back to engineering anyway." Shaw almost smiled. That sounded like Delgado. A knock on the door interrupted them. Shaw looked up to see Ambassador Thelran enter the medical bay. The alien diplomat's skin was a peaceful blue color, and his 4 arms were held in a gesture of respect. "Captain Shaw," Thelran said, approaching the bed, "I am pleased to see you awake. How do you feel?" "Like I was hit by an asteroid," Shaw said honestly. "An appropriate metaphor given your recent tactics." Thelran pulled up a chair and sat down. "Captain, I came to deliver a message from the Coalition Council. They are formally requesting an audience with you once you have recovered. They wish to discuss Earth's role in the galactic defense against the Vakrians." Shaw frowned. "What kind of role?" "A significant one. The Council wants human tactical advisors. They want to study your combat doctrine. They want to understand how one primitive—" Thelran caught himself. "Excuse me, how one newly spacefaring species managed to achieve what we could not." "We almost died," Shaw pointed out. "Yes, but you did not. You held for 6 days against impossible odds. You destroyed 1,400 Vakrian ships, more than some entire Coalition fleets have destroyed in years of warfare. You showed creativity, adaptability, and a refusal to surrender that inspired everyone who watched." Thelran leaned forward. "Captain, your battle was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Billions of beings watched the Indomitable fight. They saw humans stand their ground. They saw courage in the face of certain death. And," Shaw asked, "and it changed everything. Species that were considering surrender have decided to keep fighting. Worlds that were planning to evacuate are now preparing defenses. The Coalition military is reorganizing its tactics based on what you demonstrated. You have given the galaxy hope, Captain. You have shown us that the Vakrians can be beaten." Shaw did not know what to say to that. He had just been trying to protect Earth. The idea that their battle had inspired the entire galaxy seemed impossible. A week later, the Indomitable limped back to Earth orbit, escorted by a dozen Coalition warships in a gesture of respect. The sight that greeted them took Shaw's breath away. Every human ship in the Terran Defense Force was there, arranged in formation. Military vessels, civilian transports, even small personal craft. They had formed an honor corridor through space, and as the Indomitable passed between them, each ship activated its exterior lights in salute. "Sir," Tanaka said from her station, "I am receiving transmissions from Earth. All major cities are holding celebrations. They are calling us heroes. They are calling you the Defender of Earth." Shaw felt uncomfortable with that title. He was not a hero. He was just a captain who had done his duty. But looking around the bridge at his surviving crew, At the faces of people who had fought beside him for 6 days of hell, he saw something else. Pride, not in themselves individually, but in what they had accomplished together. "Lieutenant," Shaw said, "open a channel to Earth, all frequencies. Channel open." "Sir?" Shaw stood from his command chair one last time, feeling every injury and ache in his body. But he stood straight and spoke clearly. "This is Captain Marcus Shaw of the TDS Indomitable. We are coming home. I want everyone on Earth to know that your Terran Defense Force fought with honor and courage. I want you to know that 203 brave men and women gave their lives to protect our world. I want you to know that we held the line not because we were special, but because we were human. Because when faced with monsters that wanted to destroy everything we love, we chose to fight rather than run." He paused, gathering his thoughts. The galaxy is watching us now. They see a young species barely 50 years into space exploration, standing up to an enemy that has terrorized the stars for 3 centuries. They are wondering what makes humans different. I will tell you what makes us different. We are stubborn. We are creative. We refuse to accept that anything is impossible. And most importantly, we stand together when it matters. His voice grew stronger. The Vakrian War is not over. The Coalition will need our help in the battles to come. Earth will need to build more ships, train more crews, prepare for a longer conflict. But I believe we can win. Not because we have better technology or more powerful weapons, but because we have something the Vakrians will never understand. We fight for each other. We fight for home. We fight for a future worth living in. Shaw looked around his damaged bridge one final time. We are Terran. We hold the line. Always. The transmission ended to thunderous applause and cheering across Earth. In cities around the planet, people celebrated in the streets. In orbit, every ship in the Defense Force sounded their horns in a cacophony of noise and joy. 3 months later, Shaw stood in the Terran shipyards watching a new generation of warships take shape. The battle had changed everything about human ship design and tactics. Engineers had studied the Indomitable's damage reports and combat logs, learning what worked and what did not. The new dreadnoughts were bigger, better armored, and carried more weapons. They had names like Valiant, Resolute, Defiant, and Unyielding. Each one represented humanity's commitment to the galactic war effort. Impressive, is it not? Shaw turned to find Admiral Zhao beside him. She was smiling, something he had rarely seen during the Martian Wars. 12 new capital ships, she said, 40 cruisers, over 100 destroyers and corvettes. Earth has committed 60% of our industrial capacity to military production. We are building a fleet that will make the galaxy take notice. At what cost? Shaw asked quietly. How many lives will those ships require? How many more battles like the Corridor? Zhao's smile faded. Too many. But the alternative is extinction. The Vakrians will not stop. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. They must be fought, I know, Shaw said. I just wish there was another way. There is always another way, Captain. But sometimes the other way leads to disaster. You made the right choice in the Corridor. You held the line when everyone else had given up hope. That is leadership. That is heroism. I was just doing my duty. No, Zhao said firmly. You went far beyond duty. You inspired your crew to fight when they knew they were going to die. You inspired the galaxy to keep fighting when they were ready to surrender. Do not diminish that, Shaw did not respond. He still struggled with being called a hero. Too many good people had died under his command. Zhao seemed to sense his thoughts. Captain, I am reassigning you. You are being promoted to Commodore and given command of the 3rd Fleet. 12 ships, all veterans who have been trained in your tactics. The Coalition has requested that you deploy to the Outer Rim, where the Vakrians are mounting a new offensive. When? Shaw asked. 2 months. Enough time to finish repairs on the Indomitable and get her ready for action again. The Coalition has provided some of their technology to help with the restoration. She will be better than new. Shaw looked out at the shipyards, at the vessels being built to defend humanity and the galaxy. He thought about Sarah, about his daughter who was now 10 years old. He had missed her birthday again. He would probably miss many more. But he would fight so that she could grow up in a galaxy free from the Vakrian threat. He would fight so that Earth remained safe. He would fight because someone had to. I accept the assignment, Shaw said. The memorial service was held on a bright Tuesday morning in New Seattle. 10,000 people gathered to honor the 203 crew members who had died aboard the Indomitable. Their names were engraved on a massive wall of black stone that reflected the sky above. Shaw stood before the crowd, wearing his dress uniform with its new medals and rank insignia. He did not want to be here, did not want to speak about the people he had lost, but he owed them this much. I did not know all of these people personally, he began, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. A ship with 400 crew is too large for one captain to know everyone intimately. But I knew them in the ways that matter. I knew they were brave. I knew they were dedicated. I knew they believed in something bigger than themselves. He looked at the names on the wall. Lieutenant Sarah Chen was the best weapons officer I ever served with. She could calculate firing solutions in her head faster than most computers. She died at her station, firing until the last moment. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez kept our life support running for 3 days after it should have failed. He died from smoke inhalation while repairing a ventilation system. Ensign David Park was terrified during his first combat. He asked me if it would matter if we died. I told him yes. I hope I was right. The crowd was completely silent. We held the line at Helios Corridor because 203 people gave everything they had. They bought time for Earth to prepare. They showed the galaxy that humanity would not surrender. They died as heroes, though I suspect most of them would reject that label. They were just people doing their duty. Shaw's voice grew stronger. The Vakrian War will continue. More battles will be fought. More lives will be lost. But we will remember these names. We will remember their sacrifice. And we will make sure it was not in vain. We will fight for the galaxy they died protecting. We will show the universe what humanity can do. He stepped back from the podium and saluted the memorial wall. Around him, 10,000 people stood and saluted as well. 2 months later, the Indomitable was ready for service again. She looked different now. Her hull had been reinforced with alien alloys, her weapons upgraded with coalition technology. But her core was still human engineering, still the ship that had held the line for 6 days. Shaw stood on the bridge as the crew came aboard. Many were survivors from the original battle. Others were transfers from other ships, eager to serve on the vessel that had become legend. Together, they would form the backbone of the Third Fleet. Captain, Okonkwo said. He had been promoted to executive officer of the fleet. All ships report ready for departure. We have the Indomitable, Valiant, Resolute, Defiant, and 8 cruisers. Total crew complement of 3,200. Destination? Shaw asked. The Outer Rim. The Vakrians are massing near the Arcturus sector. Coalition intelligence suggests they are planning a major offensive. Shaw nodded. Another battle. Another chance to hold the line. All ships, he transmitted. This is Commodore Shaw. We are heading into combat again. Some of you fought with me at Helios Corridor. Others are new to the fleet. But all of you are Terran. You know what that means. We do not quit. We do not surrender. We fight for Earth and for the galaxy. He paused. The Vakrians believe they can terrorize the stars forever. They believe no one can stand against them. They are wrong. We proved that at the corridor, and we will prove it again. We are humanity. We are stubborn, creative, and relentless. We are the line that will not break. His voice rang with conviction. All ships prepare for FTL jump. Destination, Arcturus sector. Let us show the Vakrians what it means to face humanity. The Indomitable's engines flared to life, brighter than before. Around her, 11 other human warships activated their drives. Together, they jumped into FTL, leaving Earth behind but carrying its spirit with them. In the shipyards, more vessels were being built. On Earth, recruits were training for the fleet. Across the galaxy, coalition species were reorganizing their militaries based on human tactics. The Vakrian swarm had terrorized the stars for 300 years, but humanity had shown the galaxy something new. Not just courage or determination, but the absolute refusal to accept defeat, the willingness to stand and fight even when all hope seemed lost. The age of Terran ascendancy had begun. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 different languages and on 1,000 different worlds, beings who had once thought humanity was primitive and backwards now spoke of them with respect. They told stories of the single dreadnought that held the line. They told of Captain Marcus Shaw and his 400 crew members, who faced impossible odds and refused to break. The Vakrians had learned an important lesson at Helios Corridor. They had learned that humans were not prey to be consumed. They were warriors to be feared. They were defenders who would fight with everything they had to protect what mattered. They had learned that Terra holds the line, always.